All right, good afternoon. This morning, as you may have seen, it was him? Yeah, yeah. We know who the troublemakers are. All right, this morning, as you may have seen, the Secretary General presented his report entitled Making Migration Work for All to member states. He emphasized that migration is a positive global phenomenon that powers economic growth, reduces inequalities, and connects diverse societies. He noted that migrants make a major contribution to international development, both by their work and by sending remittances home to their home countries, which last year added up to nearly $600 billion, or 3 times that of all development aid. However, he said, global migration remains poorly managed, as evidenced by humanitarian crises impacting people on the move and in human rights violations suffered by those people. The Secretary General said the report recognizes country sovereignty as the basis for better managed migration, but also stresses the need for international cooperation to make progress to the challenges surrounding the issue. For her part, the Special Representative for International Migration, Louise Arbour, said that sound and smart policies on this topic must be based on facts, not assumptions or myths. She added that countries must consider all the people affected by migration, which includes not just migrants, but also the families that depend on them. Mark Lowcock, the Emergency Relief Coordinator, said in a press briefing at the end of his first visit to Syria that that he saw firsthand the colossal toll of the brutal and sustained hostilities and heard harrowing stories from people caught up in the conflict. In Homs, he saw whole districts with row upon row of homes and businesses reduced to rubble. Mr. Lowcock said he's particularly concerned about the fate of the besieged people in East Ghouta and is also deeply worried about civilians affected by the upsurge in violence in Idlib and those trapped in horrendous conditions throughout the northeast of Syria. He also had detailed and open discussions about the crisis and what more needs to be done to reduce humanitarian suffering with government representatives, and also met with local authorities, the diplomatic community, and humanitarian organizations. On the basis of these discussions, Mr. Lowcock is hoping soon to see a number of positive developments enabling the UN to sustain and improve the aid effort this year. Those included the finalization of the UN's humanitarian response plan for 2018, which will require $3.5 billion from donors to meet the needs of more than 13 million people in all parts of Syria. Further progress on evacuating people from East Ghouta and convoys to the besieged areas. The Undersecretary General for Political Affairs, Jeffrey Feltman, continues his visit to Libya today, where he took a trip to eastern Libya, to Al-Quba, where along with the Special Representative, Hassam Salame, he met with House of Representatives Speaker Agila Saleh. During that meeting, Mr. Feltman recalled the international consensus regarding the Libya political agreement as the sole framework for the political transition. Yesterday in Tripoli, Mr. Feltman met with Prime Minister Sarraj as well as with the High State Council President Sweli. He stressed the need to work constructively to create the necessary political, legal, and operational conditions for the holding of elections and the completion of the transition as a result to an inclusive political process. The deputy head of the mission of Office of the Special Envoy for Yemen, Muin Shreim, concluded a 5-day visit to Sana'a, during which he held meetings with on the resumption of the Yemeni peace process with senior political figures from Ansar al movement, the General People's Congress, and other political and civil society leaders. Mr. Shreim was encouraged by the commitment and cooperation of his Yemeni interlocutors to the resumption of the peace process. He urged the parties to engage fully and in good faith with the Office of the Special Envoy to reach a Yemeni-led agreement to finally end the conflict. The deputy head of mission also underscored that all parties must take concrete steps to build confidence between them. This includes ensuring the uninterrupted operation of Hodeida Port, which is a critical artery for the shipment of humanitarian assistance and commercial goods, while refraining from actions that violate applicable UN Security Council resolutions. And Nikolai Mladenov, The special coordinator for the Middle East peace process today reiterated that Israeli settlement construction is illegal under international law and is one of the major obstacles to peace. He urged the Israeli authorities to cease and reverse such actions, including the decision to advance more than 1,000 housing units in the occupied West Bank. He said that settlement-related activities undermine the chances for the establishment of a viable, contiguous Palestinian state as part of a negotiated two-state solution. They entrenched a one-state reality that is incompatible with realizing the national aspirations of both people, said Mr. Mladenov. Back here next door in the Security Council chamber, Mohammed Chambas, the Special Representative for West Africa and the Sahel, briefed council members saying that despite continuous progress, notably regarding democratic and peaceful political transitions, the security situation in the region remains a matter of great concern, from Mali to Niger to Nigeria. He noted an uptick in the number of incidents related to Boko Haram attacks in September of last year, with a five-fold increase in the use of children as suicide bombers in 2017 as opposed to the previous year. In the Sahel, the Group of Five has made significant progress in operationalizing their joint force. Mr. Chambas added, stressing that stemming human trafficking must continue to be a top priority for 2018. The UN, he said, also continues to pioneer the sustaining peace approach in the Gambia and Burkina Faso to ensure lasting peace and the consolidation of these young democracies. After the successful democratic elections in Liberia, he said that further attention now needs to be paid for the forthcoming election in Sierra Leone and Guinea, and he also stressed the continuing protests and lack of consensus on the implementation of constitutional reforms in Togo that could threaten the holding of legislative and local elections this year in the country. And yesterday afternoon, you saw Mr. Lacroix, the head of peacekeeping operation, brief the Security Council on Darfur. He stressed that following the military victory against the rebel movement, the governments of Sudan is firmly consolidating its control and state authority across Darfur, except in pockets of the Jebel Mara area. And our colleagues at the World Food Programme and the UN Refugee Agency appealed today to donors after they were forced to reduce food rations and cash assistance for more than 100,000 refugees in Rwanda, including funding shortages forced WFP to trim assistance to 90% in November and December, and the funding situation is now so bad that from January, WFP has reduced ration sizes even further to 75%. Only refugees identified as particularly vulnerable, such as children under 5, school children, pregnant and nursing mothers, as well as people living with HIV and TB, are under treatment or still receive a full ration. And our friends at the Food and Agricultural Organization issued their monthly food price index today, showing a decline in global food prices in December, led by sharp decreases for vegetable oils and dairy products. Despite the late year slide, the food price index in 2017 is up 8.2% from 2016, reaching the highest annual average since 2014. First honor roll today. Good news on the budget front. 7 member states have already paid in full their regular budget dues for 2018. They are Armenia, Benin, Hungary, Liberia, Poland, South Sudan, and Ukraine. We thank them for being the first, and we hope to get more. So the honor roll is at what now? 7. There you go. Somebody's paying attention. Sir.
Thank you, Stephane. Yesterday, a Syrian refugee, father of 4, set himself on fire outside the office of the United Nations in Tripoli, Lebanon, protesting the fact that he couldn't get any help from the UNHCR for 4 months, according to what his wife mentioned. Do you have any comment on why UNHCR was unable to provide him with the help he requested? And do you think, in light of this incident, is the UNHCR going to review some of its policies?
Look, I don't. First of all, I would say I think we're all heartbroken by that event, and it shows the desperation of this man and what he had to endure and what his family had to endure. I don't have the details of his particular case. I do know that our colleagues at UNHCR and other organizations serving refugees throughout the world do their utmost to serve the population in the best way they can with the funding that we have. And as you know, speaking in general terms, again, I don't know about his case, but we are, our humanitarian appeals are underfunded. The needs have never been greater. We are very grateful for the donations that we've received, which have never been greater. But you see, like in Rwanda, where because of unpredictable funding, we have to cut rations, and we've seen it before in dealing with Libyan, Syrian refugees, where because of lack of funding, we've not been able to fulfill the ration. So I would encourage you to talk to UNHCR about the particular case, but obviously I think we all send our sympathies. We wish him a recovery and send our sympathies to his family. Joe. And then Pam.
Yes. If it's determined or decided by the Trump administration to reimpose sanctions on Iran's central bank, and that is being actively discussed, on the grounds separate and apart from the JCPOA, on the grounds that the bank is being used to finance the development of missiles, Iran's terrorism campaign, et cetera, Hezbollah. What is the UN's position in terms of whether it would be viewed by the UN as a violation of the JCPOA?
I try to stay away from the speculation business. So let's see what is announced. I think, as a matter of principle, we have said, and from here, the Secretary General has said that we think the JCPOA, the Iran agreement, is a very important diplomatic achievement of the last few years, and everything should be done to try to support that.
Well, let me reframe the question then, if I may.
You may, Counselor.
Thank you. And I'll try to do it in a more general sense, which is, does the UN acknowledge that there may be several grounds for imposing even unilateral sanctions on the Iranian regime, independent and apart from any alleged JCPOA violations, including Iran's central bank? Given the fact that Iran itself claims that its missile launches are outside the JCPOA, would it be permissible, in the UN's view, for sanctions to then be reimposed because of those missile launches?
Again, I would argue speculative. I will say a few things. One, the Secretary General, as mandated, reports to the Security Council on a regular basis on the agreement. Whatever basis countries use to impose unilateral sanctions is their own basis. So I will leave it at that. Pam.
Thank you, Steph. There was a meeting with the Secretary General, with Ambassador Haley and General McMaster. Any comments you can make? Any sense? You had said it was about Afghanistan, a range of global issues. Any sense of the takeaway? And if there is a trip of the Security Council, is there anything you would say about the importance of the UN in Afghanistan?
I have no comment on a potential trip by the Security Council. On the meeting, it was what we would call here tour d'horizon of just a whole number of issues that are of mutual interest, Secretary General and the U.S., and there are quite a lot of them. The United Nations, I think, plays a very important role in Afghanistan in terms of reconstruction, in terms of development, in terms of helping with political stability, and it represents the will and the wish of the international community to ensure that Afghanistan is a strong and stable country where human rights and where women's rights are respected.
Just one little follow-up on that. The U.S. National Security Advisor had briefed the UN Security Council on Afghanistan. Did that topic come up with the Secretary General?
Again, I have nothing further to say on that. Mr. Lee.
Sure. I want to ask you about Myanmar and Cameroon, Nigeria. Yeah, in Myanmar, you may have seen that the commander-in-chief of the military has basically admitted that these bodies that were found in something called In Din were in fact killed by the army and Buddhist villagers, he described it as. So it's a rare admission. So I wanted to know, one, what's the UN's reaction to it, and two, what steps the Secretary General has taken on the GA's, mandate, I guess, to have an envoy.
When we have something to announce on the envoy, we will. We've heard and understood the instructions from the General Assembly. I think what is important is that those individuals who are responsible for perpetrating these heinous acts be brought to justice.
And could I ask you, I'd ask you on Monday about this abduction of 9 Southern Cameroon's leaders in Abuja. So it's they were taken out of a hotel, by armed men.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering. I was wondering even in I was wanting to see if Mr. Chambas, who I know covers Nigeria, what's the UN system? You said that you're aware of it and trying to monitor it.
We have not seen any confirmation or not. We're still looking at the situation, but we've not seen any official or been made aware of any official confirmation that the incidents happened.
Well, the Guardian has a quote from a Nigerian official saying that they did take them into custody, and there's a big concern that they'll be extradited to Cameroon. But my question, since I see that Amina J. Mohammed's schedule says that she's in Abuja for the entire week, meeting with government officials. It seems. I guess I'm asking you: has she asked them if they're responsible?
I have nothing else to add.
It's a disappearance.
Stefano.
Thank you, Stephane. About the report presented, Making Migration Work for All. Is there a plan for a wall that the U.S. the Trump administration is planning to expand the wall between United States and Mexico? How he's seen in this approach that the UN want to push on a global compact on migration? He's in line with that about, an orderly legal migration, or he's going against, he's not, complying with that. And then I have an add on this. Usually, many organizations, non-profit organizations, want to rate how states, countries performing on certain issues, just mentioning, press freedom. They have a kind of, they even do beautiful maps with colors and tell you what country is doing well and what not. Wouldn't it be a good idea that the United Nations, especially Secretary General, start on this topic on migration, start to do a map with colors about what country is doing their job and what doesn't?
Look, I love maps. I love big, beautiful, colorful maps as much as the next person. I do find them very useful. The efforts of Ms. Arbour and the Migration Compact is to bring countries together. There's no mandate to rank countries or to issue an index. There's no mandate to do that. The focus is, as it was clearly said by the Secretary General, by Ms. Arbour, is to bring the countries of origin, the countries of destination, the transit countries together to build and increase safe, legal pathways to migration. I think the Secretary General was very clear on that. On the issue of the wall, again, it's speculation. I read the press like you do. There's a big debate in this country. The messages, again, from the Secretary General, from Ms. Arbour, was one that international cooperation is not about infringing on national sovereignty. And I think Ms. Arbour was very clear when she talked about borders and the responsibilities of states and the rights of states to secure their borders. And she said it's about the security of the state, it's about the security of the people in those states, and it's also about human security of those people who are crossing. The point that I think we're all trying to make is that international cooperation can lead to better and safer legal pathways to migration. There is an economic argument to be made, and the Secretary General elaborated on that, and I would urge you to read his speech. So that's where we're going on there. I'll come back to Dulcie.
Yeah, as a matter of form, is the UN required to record its meetings, the Secretary General's meetings with public officials like H.R. McMaster?
Record in what way?
Record the conversation. For freedom of information.
Audio recordings?
Documentation.
No,
Yeah.
we don't. As far as I'm aware, there are no audio recordings of the Secretary General's bilateral meetings.
So there's no record then of what was said.
It's a meeting behind closed doors, and there is no. Obviously, I'm sure each side takes notes, and those go into the archives, and we give you the readouts that we're able to give you of those meetings. Iftikhar.
Thank you, Stephane. Do you have any statement from or Mr. Mladenov about the killing of 2 teenage Palestinians in Gaza and West Bank yesterday?
I did not
Israeli
see
forces?
those. I did not see those particular reports, but I will look into it. And then Evelyn, sorry, go ahead.
A couple of days ago, I asked about one of the protesters in Iran got killed while he was present, and since then the number rise to 5. I was wondering if there is any desirable number that that UN can pull up the sleeve and do something about it.
In desirable numbers in terms of what I don't understand. Yeah.
Of the prisoners while they are
I think
in custody.
it's important that the right to peaceful assembly be respected, the right to peaceful protest be respected, and that if there are any deaths in custody, that the national authorities investigate them fully and bring those who may be responsible for those deaths to account.
Sorry, but if the government doesn't do that, isn't it part of the UN that say, okay, what's going on?
I think I've made our concerns known. Evelyn.
Yes, to follow up on Joe's question, are any, I mean, the U.S. already has unilateral sanctions against Iran for a pile of reasons dating back to, who knows, to the 79 capture of the embassy. But are any new sanctions against Iran at this point, regardless of the reason, a violation of the agreements made on the JCPOA?
I'm just not going to speculate on what may or may not happen tomorrow. I think we understand there is a deadline in terms of the U.S.'s own national position. Let's see what happens, and once something happens, we can actually try to comment on it. Mr. Abadi. Sorry, did you have a follow-up? I don't want to cut you off too early.
The Secretary General's speech on migration, he deviated a lot from the text. Are you going to put out a new
I think
one?
we put out an as-delivered version, and we're transcribing his closing remarks. Mr. Abadi.
Right.
Thank you, Stephane. On migration, still, the Secretary General and Ms. Louise Arbour see a link between, obviously, national security and migration. Do they see any link at all between migration and international security?
I would say so, and I think it's implied in the text. Olga.
Thanks, Stephane. The question on DPRK and, I mean, the negotiations between DPRK and South Korea that we've seen earlier this week. After the talks, has anyone contacted UN and asked for SG involvement for the further process?
Not that I'm aware.
And you promised to say later if SG is going to Olympic Games?
I did promise.
So?
I think we will let the Secretary General announce his travel next week. Just a reminder, there is a press conference. He will be holding a press conference.
So do you see any chance, or at least PGA is going to Olympic Games? Do you see any opportunity or chance of UN to be involved in next talks?
I think let's take things one step at a time. Nada.
Stephane, the Secretary General's views on migration are, I would argue, clearly at odds with the Trump administration. I wonder if the Secretary General has spoken to the U.S. since they quit negotiations in December. Has there been any kind of dialogue back and forth?
I think first of all, I would stress that the door remains open. The process will continue, and we very much hope that the U.S. Would participate at some point in these discussions. It's a global problem, and I think the U.S. is a very important player in these discussions, and I think our views are clearly known to them. Pam, then Matthew, and then Mr. Abadi.
Thank you, Steph. The UN Special Envoy for Road Safety, Jean Tott, was here yesterday and met with someone in the SG's office or with the SG. What do you expect, and when do you expect the next report, and what's the progress? And what?
Yeah, he met with the Secretary General. I can check on when the next report is. Obviously, I think road safety is a very important matter that in fact I think can be a point of unity for a number of countries, as it impacts in different ways countries in the global north and in the global south. Mr. Lee.
Sure. I want to ask you a couple of EU questions. You'll see why, and one on Haiti. So you can. The EU was an election observer in Kenya, and yesterday they released a report pretty much damning of the process. And I guess what I wanted to ask you about is that they were supposed to launch it in Nairobi. They were basically told you can't come. The government there has rejected the observers' findings. Some people think that they should have said it earlier, but I guess what I'm wondering is that since the UN is there with a big presence, if they won't comment on the elections themselves, I mean in Nairobi, if they have no view of the fairness of the elections as they were ultimately held, do they think that their host country of Yunnan should be open to the actual election observers that there were coming and releasing their report in a normal way?
I don't know the details. I don't know the details of what was accepted or what was refused. But you can check with our colleagues in Nairobi. And as you know, we were not observers in these elections. Your next question.
Give it a go. Yeah, the other one was, it had to do with. I'd asked you about this, and I guess on Tuesday apparently you confirmed that the Secretary General did write a letter to the Frente Polisario, and you said it was entirely, or at least the part that you read out was all about Girgarat. They obviously, the Frente Polisario said it had to do with natural resources as well. And in the interim, the EU Court of Justice Advocate General has issued a ruling yesterday that the EU-Morocco fishing agreement is illegal for a variety of grounds, including that that it violates international law. So is it? Can you? I guess there's some. I mean, some people in Moroccan state media said that there was no letter. Now there is a letter. Can you say, was the concept of natural resources now highlighted once again by the EU Court of Justice part of this letter or not? And would you just release the letter to put
No,
to bed this
the letter
controversy?
was a private letter. I just wanted to confirm that it had been sent, and I'll leave it at that.
So really, it's not. So
I
do you have any?
I will leave it.
Does the Secretary General or Mr. Kohler have any comment on this EU decision in
Not
terms of natural resources?
Not at this point. Obviously, we're focusing on Mr. Kohler and his ability to do his work.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay.
While you're here.
I don't know. You might have something on this. The Intercept had a long, detailed story about how MINUJUICE, the new mission in Haiti, actually participated in the planning of an attack or military action in November that resulted in the killing of Haitian civilians on a school campus. And I'm just wondering, given that it's a new mission, all the things that the Secretary General and others said about this new approach. Basically, it seems like the mission is saying, yes, we participated, then we stepped back, and the Haitian police then did these killings. No one's been held accountable. What does the UN think about this, that no one has been held accountable, and would they participate with these same Haitian National Police units in the future, given that they killed civilians inside a school just after the UN was with them?
What I can confirm is that the Haitian National Police did undertake this operation in November 13th in Conlarvine, outside of in the metropolitan area of Port-au-Prince. The UN police, MINUJUICE, supported the Haitian police in the planning stage and provided an operational perimeter support. The report incident involving the civilian deaths occurred after the conclusion of the operation, where 2 Haitian police officers were killed. An investigation conducted by the Haitian National Police indicated that the reported civilian deaths were part of unilateral action conducted by some Haitian National Police officers after the conclusion of the operation, who had proceeded without advising their hierarchy and without authorization. The Haitian National Police also identified the police officers responsible for the killing of the 8 confirmed victims. And obviously, we do expect that these people be held to account.
Is MINUJUICE still operating with the same units? Would they do the same coordination
I think
now that they did then?
I'm not going to get into operational details, but it clearly, to put it in plain terms, it seems to have been rogue elements. Mr. Abadi.
Thank you, Stephane. Yesterday, in answer to a question about the conflict in Korea and the meeting of the two parties, you mentioned that several parties contributed to the outcome.
Yes, Korea. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Including through the presence of Undersecretary General Jeffrey Feldman. Was it the UN, for sake of transparency, was it the UN that suggested that the occasion of the Winter Olympic be seized upon for the parties to meet? And do you consider this a successful preventive diplomacy case?
Look, I think no one would like to claim full credit for the positive meeting that happened. We're not going to do that. I think Mr. Feldman's visit did play a role in creating an atmosphere that led to the discussions. As far as whether I'm not able to comment on your second part. We're glad that the talks took place, and we're glad that the North Koreans will be present at the Olympics. No, I heard the question, and I have nothing to share on that. Thank you.